And I want to welcome everyone who has joined us. And we'll start with a bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And we're going to go to the screen share. And here we are. So we were in the middle of a Rashi, and this is where we were. And we were talking about the fact, we're talking about the plague of darkness. And here there are in a few of the plagues a distinction made between the children of Israel and the Egyptians. And in the plague of darkness, it mentions specifically that amongst the Egyptians there was darkness, but amongst the Jews in their habitations there was light. And Rashi is analyzing why. Why is this the case? And we were saying that one reason is that there were many Israelites who died in this particular time. And in order to save them from humiliation and from the Egyptians saying, well, they're no different than we are, the Egyptians were in the dark, and the Israelites were able to bury their deceased. And as I said yesterday, the truth is that more people died. The majority of the population actually died in this time because they were not worthy of the Exodus. But there's another reason. Another reason. Shechapsu Yisrael, that is, the Israelites sought, they looked for, they searched, Vera'u, and they saw et Klehem, they saw their vessels, their utensils. Ukeshiatsu, when they left, Vahayu Shoalin Mehem, and they would ask of them, Vahayu Omrim Ein Biadenu, they would say, we don't have them. Klum at all. Omer lo, he would say to him, Ani re'itiv beveitecha, I saw it, or beveitcha, I saw it in your house, uvamakom plonihu, and it's in this specific location. So it could, I think when it says Klehem, their vessels, since Yisrael is the last, the closest, the most proximate subject, I assume that we're talking about articles that the Israelites had, that the Egyptians at that point had in their possession, and they were going and reclaiming them, because there is certainly another statement in the Torah itself that when they left Egypt, the Egyptians were so glad to see them go and wanted to be sure to make sure they left entirely. They gave them things, and it talks about them stripping the Egyptians. But I think this Rashi, it is ambiguous, but here it does seem to mean that the Egyptians were denying that they had any of the Israelites' property, and this allowed them. Did you see, Lauren? Did you see any?
Did you do the blessing?
I did.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was,
That's okay.
but where are you in the Rashi? I can't find it in where I thought we were.
Verse 22, we're going to the end of it. To the end of verse.
I thought that referred to the things that belong to the Egyptians, but it's hard to say.
Right, I agree. Shirabeth, that's what I always thought too. But as I'm reading this over with you, it sort of makes sense to say that it's possible that the Egyptians had their property, had the Israelite property. But yeah, all these years, I always assumed it was talking about the Egyptian property.
Yeah, I don't see this.
Okay. All right. Let me keep going. This is out of place, by the way, I think, in the Safari translation. Shloshet Yamim. So what it means is a triad of days. So the word is shalosh, which means three in Hebrew. Shalosh shel Yamim, right? A triad of days. And he gives the French, right? Terzain, which means like threesome, right? Balaz, dreiheit, a threesome, or a triplet. V'chein shiv'at yamim, and likewise the term shiv'at yamim, a 7-day period. Bechol makom, in every place, when it says Shivat Yamim, it refers to, and here, Seten Shel Yamim, right? A week in this case, of course, is what it's talking about, but it means a 7-day period. So we're on to Shlishi. Vayikra Pharaoh el Moshe. Moses, yes?
Verse 23.
24 now. Yes, we were looking at 23.
Oh, I thought you were just doing the Rashi for 22. I have, that's the way it's written here.
Yeah, here it's written as 22. Go ahead.
And then verse 23, it says is on Sheni.
Yes, let's see. Oh, yeah, it says Shloshet Yamim. So it is 23. It just, here it's marked as 22.
Oh, the Rashi is in the wrong place.
I guess it could be. I don't know.
Well, 23
no,
does.
Yeah.
They both refer to 3 days.
Yeah, here it is, Shloshet Yamim. No, it could be verse 22. That could be accurately assigned. Yeah. So it is on verse 22. And in your copy, it's on 23?
No, it's on 22, but you haven't, you were going to Shlishi without finishing Sheni.
Oh, thank you. Good. Thanks for making me aware of that. Thank you. Lo ra'u ish et achiv. A person did not see literally it's his brother, but let's say his companion. V'lo kamu ish mitachtav. Nor did a person get up, shloshet yamim, for 3 days, ulachol b'nei Israel, but to all of the Israelites, haya or the mushvotam, there was light in their habitations. So it does seem to go on a little bit. He sort of does anticipate verse 23 as well. Vayikra Pharaoh el Moshe. So Pharaoh called Moses, Vayomer lachu ivdu et Hashem, and he said to them, "Go serve Hashem. Rak tzonchen uvekarchen yutzag. Only your flocks and your cattle shall remain. Gam tapchem yelech imachem. In this case, even your young ones shall go with you." So he's making a concession, but he wants them to leave their flocks and their cattle, their herds. Yutzag. This word yutzag, again, not necessarily a common Hebrew word. Yehei mutzag bimkomo. It should remain in its place. So we could translate yutzag as remain. Just only your flocks and herds shall remain. However, your little ones can go with you. So we're on to Kaf Hey. Let me make sure. Right, okay. Vayomer Moshe, Moses responded. He said, "Gam ata titen biyadenu zvachim v'olot." You too will give, shall give into us offerings and olot, whole offerings. Va'asinu l'Hashem Eloheinu, that we shall perform to the Lord our God. So what does it mean? Simply that you shall give to us. You also shall give to us. So it is, again, a little elliptical. Gam ata titen. So Rashi fills in the argument. Lord dayecha. It is not only shemiknenu yelech imanu, that our flocks and herds should go, that our cattle should go with us. Elagam ata titen. Not only that, but you yourself are going to give us animals to take along. Here we are. In fact, he's saying, in fact, our cattle, our will also go with us. Lo tishaer pasa, not a footfall will remain, not a hoof will remain. Ki mimenu nikach, for we shall take of it. La'avod et Hashem Elokeinu, to serve the Lord our God. Va'anachnu lo deda, because we, at this point, we do not know ma na'avod et Hashem, how we shall be serving Hashem ad bo'enu shama, until we arrive at the designated place, at the place. Parsa, he explains, parsa hoof, it's parsat regel, the hoof of the foot, and it's plant belaz, and in Yiddish it's fus zahala, vus hala. Again, it means hoof. And okay, that's fine. It's the French word for foot. Lo neda ma'ana na'avot. We do not know what we shall, with what we shall serve. Kama tichbad ha'avodah. To what degree it's going to be required. We have no idea how heavy the requirement. Tichbad literally, of course, means heavy. So we have no idea what's going to be asked, how much we have to offer up. Shema, lest Yish'al yoter mima sheyesh biyadenu, that God is going to require of us more than we have in our hands. So we don't know what God's going to ask of us. We want to be ready. So we have to take every single animal. Yes?
Did Moshe ever say explicitly to Paro, we're going for 3 days and then we're coming back?
He just said we're going for 3 days. Whether he said we're coming back, I'm not sure. It's a good question, a very good question. We would need to go back and see. I don't believe, I said I don't believe, but I could be wrong.
Couldn't it be implied by I'm going for 3 days that you would be coming back? Why even say that?
Of course, well, it could be that they had to he thought they were going to make a 3-day journey. And the other piece, these are all really good questions. The other question is, does 3 days is that a specific, or is it a way of generally saying, it's not just overnight. We're going to be going for a while. So is 3 days another way of saying we're going to be going for a while?
Or forever?
Or forever.
In any case, Moshe intended to leave forever.
Yeah.
So I guess I've got 2 questions. One was his statement about 3 days, was that implicit or was that explicit? That we'll come back after 3 days. Is that explicit or implicit? And secondly, why did he lie to Paro that way?
Okay, so let's go back and see if we can find the statement. All right. See where this might. I'm afraid it's going to probably be in a previous parsha. So
yeah. I'll take that on as my homework for tomorrow.
Okay.
Because I can't come to the class.
I can go back easily if you want me to.
My guess would be that it was to just get the heck out of there.
Well, again.
Right, but on the other hand, he's got God on his side. He doesn't necessarily have to lie,
Okay, so the question is he lying? If, first of all, it could well be that it's an implicit statement, but he never actually said it. Okay, he never said it. So that we're going to establish. That's going to either be in the text or it is not. All right. So I actually am looking right now and see.
I don't see it in the text of the previous parsha.
You think it's in this parsha?
I don't see it in the text of the previous. They talk about 3 days, but not in terms of the Israelites leaving, just in terms of the darkness and that the Israelites will have light.
No, so let's see in the previous plagues, because when he introduces the locusts, what does he say?
In the first parsha?
In the first section there.
I'm looking through that parsha.
I'm looking too.
It's not in the first parsha, maybe at the beginning of the second.
Yeah, I'm looking here in the previous, in Va'era.
It says, stretch forth your hand over the land of Egypt, blah, blah, blah. Moses stretched forth his hand. talks about the winds. Looking for anything related to 3 days.
Okay, I actually see something here in Parshat Shemot.
Yes.
It says here, okay, this Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh. It's Parshat Shemot. It's Hey, Parak 5, verse 3, I think it says.
Okay.
ויאמרו אלוהי העברים נקרא עלינו, נלכה נא דרך 3 ימים,
Yes.
3 ימים במדבר,
Yes.
ונזבחה להשם אלוקינו,
Yes.
פן יפגענו בדבר או בחרב.
Okay.
So the God of the Hebrews has manifested himself to us. Let us go, we pray, a distance of 3 days into the wilderness to sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest he strike us with pestilence or sword. Now, he doesn't actually say, and then after we've gone that distance of 3 days, we'll turn around and come back.
Correct. So he doesn't. That's very important. If he had said that, then he would have been lying.
Right.
I mean, was he misleading Pharaoh? Was it sufficiently implicit? Or what? Again, if 3 days simply is a way of saying it's going to be more than overnight. I mean, obviously Pharaoh's worried that they're not going to come back.
Right, and he doesn't say, our God has come to us and said, I have seen your suffering as in bondage in Egypt, and I'm going to release you.
Well, and they need a head start.
Well, remember, okay, going back, Moses is saying to Pharaoh, let my people go that they may serve me, right? That God is saying, let my people go that they may serve me.
Yeah.
So the implication is, who are they serving right now?
Pharaoh.
Exactly. And so Pharaoh's going to get replaced. That's a great concern. But he's never said they were coming back. He simply said, we're going to go, and we're going to have to go for 3 days. It's going to take a while and for us to do this, and we need to make sure we're prepared.
Well, he says, let my people go. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go that they may celebrate a festival for me in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In other words, we've received this vision that God demands this of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah. So I don't think Pharaoh obviously suspected that they were going to leave, even if he didn't say it explicitly. And again, maybe the fact that he didn't say it explicitly is because it was a euphemism. He did not want to say it explicitly because of the power of words. Regardless, I mean, I think what we need to establish is that Moses never told them they were coming back.
Right. It's just, I guess part of it, when we first started today, we were talking about whose goods were they taking with them? Was it their own stuff that had been lent out, or was it the Egyptian stuff that they took with them? They're operating. On the one hand, they do have God on their side, who's taking them out with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. But on the other hand, they're human beings using the devices that human beings use against each other, like deception.
Mm-hmm.
I don't sense in the way Pharaoh understood Moses that he was being deceived. The fact that he was trying to withhold from them stuff to take was a way of him saying, I'm going to force you to come back, forcing them to come back, to return.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, but that does imply deception also.
In what way?
If you're going to hold back something because you want them to come back, it's like you don't trust what they're saying. So it's kind of like, we're leaving. We're not going to say it outright. But Pharaoh knew.
We're taking everything we own, and we're taking all of our children.
Now, there's no deception about that. And again, remember, there's also the other question I would ask is this not also showing a certain respect for the Egyptians? that he didn't say, and we ain't coming back, which is sort of sticking it in his face, but rather to imply it. That is to say, I think that we could say that Moses was implying it, and perhaps out of respect. And we read elsewhere explicitly that God told Moses to treat Pharaoh with respect.
Well, and then Pharaoh doesn't have to tell his people, oh, they got over on me.
Right. I don't think they do. I think ultimately, there's stuff left out that's true, but I think that one could make a case that it's clearly understood by both sides what's going on. That there's enough evidence to show that both sides are very aware, and that possibly the lack of communication is actually an indication of respect and not an attempt to deceive.
Very interesting.
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
that's an interesting take on it.
But in Genesis, the families of the patriarchs and also of Adam, there's a lot of deception and sometimes lack of respect. It's not something that that the Jews are avoiding.
Which is precisely why God has to
Generally.
explicitly say to Moses, "You treat Pharaoh respectfully." Because there's always, look, we see it nowadays. It's so awful, this business of ad hominem argumentation, that we see it. And just because you're your opponents, it doesn't mean you have to be rude and disrespectful. And yet it's such a part of our society, it seems, that people are incapable of being argumentation without having to add personal and rude comments. It's just awful. At any rate, I think that would be an argument to support it. Whether it happens many times, okay, so I can only think that, okay, we might argue that the Cain and Abel incident is one of deception. All right. We certainly could argue that the situation in Shechem, where the Torah explicitly says how the brothers used guile, all right, in that regard. We also see Jacob tricking his brother.
Well, Abraham kind of tricked his father too, at least according to Midrash.
Yeah, those are stories. I wouldn't, I'm not saying you couldn't make an argument, but it's not in the Torah, and
that one's not right.
Yeah, and I have difficulty with those stories. I have to tell you, the sad part is that there's a conflict of values that goes on in those. But I think the point of the story is, if you don't want to dig in those particular ones, the ones about Abraham, I think it's more an argumentation. The whole point is that when he says to his father, well, the big one, smashed the little ones, the big idol smashed the little ones, his father reacts by saying, how's that possible? And of course, Abraham says, yeah, but you're even giving more, you're attributing even greater power to it than I am, right? And you don't believe me. Why should I believe you regarding your power, the power that you're attributing to this?
Well, I get the point of it. I'm just saying.
I'm happy with it.
Yeah. That was not my point. It's just that, but that is Midrash. It's not in the text, but
right.
It is deception.
Right. So the point about the Midrash is it's there more by way of trying to bring out something than to speak specifically about acceptable behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I will be gentle on you, dear.
Are you talking to us? Lisa?
I think she was dictating a text.
Okay, let's take a look at this. So he says we're not going to have enough time possibly, but let me at least start this. First of all, make sure I've taken care of all the Rashis we need to. Yep, we did. So here's a Torah Tamima, Zavachim ve'olot. So Zavachim means like sacrifices. The olot are whole offerings. So the text that he quotes from the tractate Zavachim is Zavachim la'achila. The Zavachim, he said, are for us to eat, for us to consume. So we'll be eating meat. Ve'olot lahakrava, and whole offerings, burnt offerings, to offer up to God. So here goes. or here. Biur hadrasha, to explain this commentary, the ein hapirush zvachim, that we should not understand by the term zvachim, shlamim. Shlamim are peace offerings. We know that in Leviticus, they designate olot. The first offerings that are discussed are olot, which are complete burnt offerings where the entire animal is not consumed by human agency at all. But then later on, it mentions shlamim, where part of the animal, the fat parts of the animal, I think they're known as the imurim, are put up on the altar and burnt. Part of the animal goes to the priests, and then part of the animal is consumed by the family, right? And that's they are referred to as zavachim, as opposed to olot. So he says that's not what it means here. So when Moses uses the term zavachim, he is not talking about sacrifices. That would be shlamim. Why? Mishum de Yisrael ad matan Torah, because the Israelites, up until the time of the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, lo hikrivu shlamim, did not bring shlamim. I'm going to just use that term, all right? They are sometimes translated as peace offerings, but regardless, you should understand that with regards to a shlamim, the animal is distributed between what goes to heaven, what goes to the priests, and what goes to the family. Rak olot, they only offered up olot, whole offerings, kabo b'nei Noach, like the sons of Noach. So there was no practice, at least amongst the Israelites or amongst anybody, that when they brought a sacrifice, they would eat part of that offering. The practice was the whole animal was offered up on the altar. Umasha katuv beyitro. Well, what about what's written in the Parsha of Jethro regarding Jethro? And it says, Vayikach, he took, etc. Ola uzavachim. He took a whole offering and zavachim. And if you read Jethro, you'll see it's Exodus chapter 19, and it precedes the giving of the Torah. This chapter precedes the giving of the Torah, and here they're talking about zavachim. Mefaresh begamara. So they explain in the Gemara, Dezeh haya la'achar matan Torah. He says that passage, that chapter, actually came after the giving of the Torah. V'lo ne'emara parsha al haseder, and this parsha wasn't said chronologically. It's not in its proper chronological place. It is out of place. It comes preceding the Ten Commandments, the giving of the Ten Commandments, but in actual fact, it took place after the giving of the Ten Commandments. Uva Gemara. So no problem. In other words, when he talks about Zvachim there in Jethro, he is talking about Shlamim. He is. But that happened after the giving of the Torah. So no problem. Uva Gemara parich, and in the Gemara, which loves to really split hairs, right? Parich, it tries to break this argument. Mi kol makom, okay, that nevertheless it says zvachim ve'olot. Here it says, when Moses is talking to Pharaoh, it says zvachim ve'olot. I mean, what's the context of what he's talking about? With olot, we know he's talking about sacrifices. So since he's saying zavachim v'olot, why shouldn't we think he's also talking about shlamim, that he's talking about zavachim as far as sacrifices are concerned? The mashma, because that would implies zavachim shlamim, that he's talking about shlamim offerings. So sacrifices that are shlamim. Umashni kahai gavna, and he answers that particular challenge, that rebuttal. He says in this particular manner, that he says zavachim la'achila, that when he said zavachim, he meant for human consumption, etc., what we were saying. Uktzat tzarich, but we need to look a little further into this. The law parich mimikra meforash, that he didn't try to break this argument up the argument about Zavachim not being Shlamim, mi Parshat Vayigash, from Parsha of Vayigash back in Genesis. Dichtiv beYaakov, because regarding Jacob, it's written, Vayizbach Zavachim lelohei aviv Yitzchak. There it uses this term, Zavachim, okay, to the God of his father Isaac. And then it's talking about Jacob, and it uses Zavachim. And it says he offered it up. He sacrificed it. V'nir'eh bazeh, and it appears from this, daha destam Zavachim, that when it simply uses the term Zavachim to mean offerings, right? Shlamim, okay, when it's hurak, when it says Zavachim alone, Shlamim hurak hecha, it's that Zavachim means Shlamim, hurak hecha dichtiv gabe olot. It only means it when it says it in connection with olot. So if it just says Zvachim v'olot, okay, let me make sure this is right. The stam Zvachim shlamim hu rak hecha dichtiv gabe olot. When it said in reference to olot, aval hecha dichtiv Zvachim levad, okay, but okay. I think what he's saying, I want to make sure. Okay, let me keep going. Sorry, I had this worked out before. Aval hecha dichtiv zvachim levad, but when it just uses the term zvachim in general, heve ze shem hakolel lechol minei korbanot. He's saying if it just says the word zvachim, then it's talking about offerings. It's using a generalized statement. It's not being specific. So it's saying sacrifices. Okay. Ulachen lo hevi miyakov, and this is why he didn't bring the argument against Zavachim, meaning Shlamim, from Jacob, dichtiv be Zavachim levad, because there he only writes the word Zavachim, and when it just states the word Zavachim, it means offerings. And it appears there's some additional support from the Targum. The Bekol Makom Tirgem al Zavachim, because in every place where he's talking about Zavachim meaning Shlamim, he says Nischat Kudshin. He says it's sacred offerings, which would mean Shlamim, Dahainu Shlamim. Ubapasuk de Yaakov, and with regard to the verse regarding Jacob, he doesn't translate Zvachim that way. Shevenu, which we quoted, Tirgem Devachim. He uses a totally different translation in Aramaic, and Devachim means offerings. So there's what he's saying is that here. The reason why we translate Zvachim, we understand when Moses uses the word Zvachim ve'olot. Let me make sure I find the place. I want to make sure. Up here. It's here. Zvachim. He uses Zvachim ve'olot. Zvachim does not mean Shlamim. All right? If it had just said Zavachim, then it would mean offerings. But because this happened before Matan Torah, and because we know that before Matan Torah, they only brought Alot and they didn't bring Shlamim, we're forced to understand Zavachim here as meaning meat for them to consume. I know this is convoluted, right?
Well, if God commands a barbecue, let's have a barbecue. That's
right. The issue is how we understand this here, and we're trying to maintain consistency with the notion that up until Har Sinai, they were not offering. They only offered Olot, and they did not offer sacrifices, which were divided up in the way Shlamim were divided up. I guess when I prepared this, it made sense very clearly. Now I'm feeling I need to write this out for you to see so that you can follow the argument. All right, we're going to have to stop here. It is now 8:05. So I'm going to stop the share and stop the recording and thank those who joined.